Hello and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and this is a little weekly podcast where I try my best to answer some of your questions. Today I am wearing my Gibbs sweater. I've been wearing this on repeat this fall, as you may have noticed in some of these videos. It's just one of those ones, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the stitch pattern. I don't know if it's the yarn. I don't know what it is, but it just like drapes really nicely on my body. Like it just feels very, almost like elastic in that way that there's like bounce to it. Bounce. Let's use the word bounce. But it's just very comfortable. And maybe it is the stitch pattern and how it don't mind me as I'm like picking little fuzzy stuff off there. Because it is kind of like a rib, like a broken rib. So anyways, that is what I'm wearing it. I have paired it with a pair of my Arthur pants. I think these are my favorite ones I have made. This is from some fabric from my local fabric shop, Seams. And I'm not wearing them because I want to show them to you and I can't get my feet in the shot, but I also have with me right here the Ooey Gooey socks. If you get my newsletter, you know that these just came out this week, and it's a really bold statement, but I have to say, I think these are my favorite hand knit socks. I know it's bold, but I think they're so cute. Like, I love how they look on. I love the little welt at the cuff, and I had so much fun knitting them. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them and then we'll dive into questions. All right, so the first pair I knit, I believe was these ones. I think I started with these ones, and I went to my classic toe up with a fleegle heel. I love a toe up. I love a fleegle heel. That's like what I used for the DRK everyday socks, the bear paw socks, the Mondim socks. There's a whole bunch of them that I have done that kind of construction style with. So I really like that. I do know though, so I did some research, which I've chatted a little bit on here before, but I did do a little bit of research on the old heel flap because I know that people who love a heel flap love their heel flaps. Like people who are cuffed down heel flap people, I feel like they are strong in that opinion. And when I was reading about it, I think one of the really nice things about heel flap construction is it gives you some modification wiggle room depending on your arch. So if you have a really high arch or a really low arch, you can kind of play with the length of this heel flap to help accommodate that. So I thought that was really, really neat. You would want to knit a few pairs of heel flap socks so that you could get comfortable with that construction before you want to jump into making modifications on it. But I also think that there's probably really great tutorials out there. There's great books out there. There's a lot of like sock knitting books. So anyways, I also did cuff down heel flap, and I used Farmer's Daughter Fibers High Wood sock base, which is actually a Sock Squad exclusive that she let me use for the pattern, and they dyed up a special batch of it. And it's a pretty classic sock yarn. It's 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, so it's going to have longevity. It's going to have some strength thanks to that nylon. And that is what this pair is. This is in two colors of that, Daddy State of Mind, and I want to say Juniper. Sometimes I mix up Juniper and Ranch Romance. And Love Me Like You Used To, or is that a white one? Or a little help from my, goodbye with a little help from my friends. I'll tell you what, there's a few colorway names that I get mixed up, but I happen to have this right here. It is Juniper. Okay, so Daddy State of Mind and Juniper. And then I continued on with the Daddy State of Mind for this pair, and I actually used up some leftover Spin Cycle yarns dyed in the wool Dear Diary from my Ooey Gooey sweater. So these are really cute, my Ooey Gooey sweater. Sorry, there's some dogs outside. So anyways, I love them. And this is also the sock pattern for this year's 8th annual Sock Knit Along Challenge. I cannot believe it's been going on for 8 years. That is so wild. The very first pattern was my fluorite socks, which were a pair of just faded, kind of basic, comfy socks. And we do it every year over the long weekend here, the Thanksgiving weekend. That's in a couple weeks in the US. And in the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, it has become a tradition to pair up with the Farmer's Daughter Fibers, and we actually donate part of the proceeds for both the pattern and the yarn to Sisters United, which is the nonprofit that Candace from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers started quite a few years ago now. And it's a really amazing nonprofit. I will leave a link if you want to go check it out. If you're not familiar with them, I'm going to put it right at the top of the notes. But if you buy the pattern or a sock yarn bundle, 15% of your purchase is going to Sisters United. So that is good through the end of November for the sock pattern. And then the Highwood sock bundles from Farmer's Daughter Fibers are doing 15% until they sell out. And Spin Cycle yarns, they don't have the Highwood sock base because that is Farmer's Daughter exclusive, but they did a really similar almost Andrea's Choice sock bundle where they did Spinster's Daughter paired with Spin Cycle yarns in the same colors, and they're also donating 15% of that sock bundle for the first week. So pretty cool. And the knit along is going to kick off, I believe the first day is Wednesday, November 26th. You can I'll link the Ravelry forum, and otherwise I'll be sending out, I did already put the information in this week's newsletter, but I'll go over it again the week of so that everybody knows what's going on there. And you can also I made little slides that are on Instagram. So the information's out there. If you want to join us, we would obviously love to have you. Okay, so I think that's all the info. Oh, the prizes. So I always try to get together some prizes for the knit-alongs, and this year's are so good. Let me pull up my little thing so I don't get these mixed up. So the grand prize is the 2026 Sock Squad subscription from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers, which is so fun. That is a monthly sock yarn subscription, and it's really cute. They've been doing it for years now. It is wildly popular, and they're giving away a whole year of the subscription, which is awesome. And also 3 of my patterns of the winner's choosing. And then the next prize is a $200 gift certificate to Spin Cycle Yarns and 3 of my patterns. And then the third prize is 5 of my patterns of your choosing, or of the winner's choosing. So we've got some good prizes lined up. And if you are new to the Knit Along Challenge, basically what it is we pick a pattern. We do a hat in the spring and socks in the fall, and we try to knit the entire project from cast on to bind off in like 4 to 5 days. So for the fall one, we usually cast on anytime after 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Wednesday, and then you have to be done with a picture posted by Monday at noon Eastern Standard Time. So that gives you all of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and like the evening and the morning of the Wednesday and the Monday. So I hope you will join us. The pattern also comes with 5 different sizes. So it has both construction types. So either toe up with a fleecle heel or cuff down with a heel flap. And it's sized child through adult. And you can knit any size for the knit along challenge and do either construction. So I will tell you what, when you work in the fiber arts, when you're a knitter and a spinner and a sewist, there's always just little fuzzies around. I feel like this whole video I've been seeing, you're like, oh, there's a little fuzzy. Apparently I need to go through with the dust buster. All right. Anyways, if you couldn't tell, per the conversation last week, I ended up cutting my bangs. I know better than to do such things like this right before a work trip. I actually leave today because I'm filming this early. I'm so sorry, but long story long, I think I have a little hair in my eye, which is really not ideal, but we're going to pretend it's not in there and we're just going to continue on. I know better than to do cutting of hair right before a trip because I've made this mistake in the past, but I think they're cute and I'm happy with them and I like them. And they are actually the bangs I had way back when my daughter was a baby. Actually, it was my headshot for the past 10 years and I finally changed it to a current one because I was like, oh, this is a little outdated. I guess now that I'm in my 40s, I should update this picture from when I was in my early 30s. But okay. Wow, this has been a chatty beginning. We haven't even gotten to the questions. So if you're still with me, I'm so happy. And let's answer some questions. Okay. My question is about yarn substitutions. Sort of. You have a number of patterns that use Brooklyn Tweed, which is no longer available. Have you found a new go-to woolen spun yarn to stand in the place of Brooklyn Tweed? I know your newer patterns have some yarn sub ideas, but I'd love to hear if you found a woolen spun yarn that you love. I'd really like to make a woolen honey, but I'm nervous about trying a new woolen spun yarn without someone to vouch for it. Okay, so couple things. One, although Brooklyn Tweed is no longer being manufactured, I did a quick Google search because I was like, I just don't think it's completely sold out yet. They just announced this past spring that they were no longer going to be making yarn, and it is very sad. That was like my ride or die yarn for a really long time. I'm wearing one of their yarns right now. But when I did a quick little search, I could still find their yarn. So there are still shops who have it. They haven't completely sold out. So if you really would like to use Brooklyn Tweed, I wouldn't give up hope on that yet. I would just jump online and look for people who still are selling it. And you might even find it on sale since people know they can't get it anymore. Some shops are making room for what they can replenish. So that was the first thing. As far as substitution ideas, Harrisville, I think, would probably be the top of my list because they're actually the ones who spun Brooklyn Tweed's yarn. And they have yarns that are really comparable. So I'll go ahead and just link them below. But I love Harrisville yarns. I have used their nightlights in quite a few patterns. That is a DK. That would be a little more in line with like Shelter, or Imbue. But they have a bunch of yarn lines, so go check them out. And they definitely have everything from like lace weight to Aran weight, and they all have that like really lovely woolen, bouncy, delightful spin on them. Another one that I have not tried out yet, but I want to try out is Barrett Wool Co. Somebody actually brought that up in an episode a couple weeks ago, and they've been on my radar forever, and I've just never had a chance to try it out yet. But they have quite a few yarn lines, and they do have a woolen spun, so I would love to check them out. North Bay Fiber is another one. I used them for the Come Back Again, and I love their yarns. That is a Michigan company here, and their yarns are lovely, and I believe some of them are woolen spun. Now all of a sudden I'm having like a, let me just make sure. So I used Heritage. Was that one woolen spun? Let me just do a little. Yeah. So that's woolen spun. That one is a sport weight, but it's not super heavy. Let me look at their fingering. This is Elemental. Let's see how that one is. Oh, that one's worsted spun. Oh, Heritage fingering. There you go. So North Bay Fiber, I would highly recommend them. I have knit their yarn and I loved it. I loved it so much. I knit to come back again. So I love their yarns. And then finally, another one that I thought of was Bichy Bouche, which is a French yarn that I have used in like my Zig sweater, the Junction pullover. Oh, what did I call it? It was one for an Insta Friends knit along. I have reached the point where I think I have enough patterns that I start forgetting pattern names. Not that you're looking, you already know what pattern you want to do, but now this is gonna drive me crazy. Where is it? Oh, nope, I didn't use it in that one. Oh, there it is, Heartstrings Crop. I also used it in there. So their yarn is lovely and it's very lofty. So yeah, there's a few. If anybody else has any woolen spun specific yarns that you really love, please throw them in the comments below. And if I think of any more, I'll add them as well. Okay, question number 2. I want to use various spin cycle dyed in the wool skeins from my stash for a jaunty shawl, but I want to hold them double for a warmer, thicker, squishier shawl. Would you recommend holding dyed in the wool together with itself, same or different color, to create color bands, or maybe holding it together with a solid for a more uniform look? Honestly, I think either would look fantastic, and it's totally going to be personal preference for you. So the way I would think about it is, if you want, I would kind of think about like your wardrobe, your coats, your jackets, what you might typically wear a shawl with, and decide, okay, a lot of my clothing or jackets tend to be pretty neutral, so I really want to add a pop of color. So I'm going to amp the color up, and I'm going to hold 2 skeins of dyed in the wool together. I would definitely consider those skeins, like you can kind of twist them around each other in a little section and just kind of see how those colors play together, and if you like them. No matter what, you're still going to get some color bands, you're still going to get some shifting happening, some kind of like light stripes, if you will, because that's the nature of the yarn. Even in like my hand spun, when I feel like it's going to be totally broken up, shattered all over the place as far as color repeats go, you still end up seeing some of that happening. Now, if you're like, no, I don't like anything too colorful, I don't want it to get muddy, I don't want a chance having some colors end up getting knit together that I don't like, then hold it with a solid. What that's going to do is it's just going to like temper the whole shawl down, and it will make it more cohesive, which I think would be gorgeous. I think either way would be beautiful and very, very fun, and it's more gonna be based on kind of your preference of, do you want it to be a little bit louder or a little bit more subdued? That also depends on the solid color you're picking. I guess in my mind I'm thinking of something kind of more neutral to hold, but the world's your oyster, you could use any color. So yeah, I'm curious what you'll choose to do. I feel like if it were me, I would probably hold it with a solid, just because I think it would be really fun to see what it does to those colors as you move on and how it kind of brings the whole thing together. I think that would look really neat. All right, question number 3. I've been knitting for about a year, a few sweaters, some hats and socks. I'm now wanting to start dabbling with color work. I've made one sweater with stripes and learned about a technique to help reduce the appearance of a jog when switching colors. My question is, are there certain techniques that I should be using in color work in the round to help keep pattern and reduce the appearance of a jog, especially if different colors are used to start or end a row. Is this something I need to worry about, or am I just overthinking it? So there are a lot of people who are not going to fiddle with any kind of trying to manage the jog that happens. So when we're working in the round, what happens is we're not actually working in a circle, we're working in a spiral. And that's why we get this little jump where things can look a little bit like skewed. Generally speaking, most pattern designers are going to keep your beginning of round in the back so that whenever anybody's looking at you from the front, they're not going to be noticing that little bit of a shift. So a lot of people who knit stranded color work are in the round are just going to be like, it's just part of it. I don't worry about it. It's so minimal. And it's something that if you go look at a store-bought Colorwork sweater, you're going to notice that they do not care. Most of them are seamed, and they'll just cut right through something. They'll line up. Things are not lined up. And you've probably never even noticed. Like I'm sure there are people out there who have, but there are a lot of us who, when we're buying something, we don't notice those little things. But when we're making it, we're like, oh, did I do something wrong? What could I have done here? So option number one is don't even worry about it. Just let it ride. It's not going to be overly visible or a big deal. And I would say in a lot of patterns, I'm not going to worry about it unless my favorite way to fix a color jog works well in that pattern. It all depends on the motif too, because some it's just not very noticeable, where others it is. I just finished a sweater that uses these little tiny stripes, and it's only in the sleeves that you have to worry about it. And honestly, in the sleeves, it's hidden under the arm. So like you don't even need to do anything. But I did find that there was a certain stripe section that if I just on one row did my favorite fix, which is basically you knit one round with your new color, and then on the on the first stitch of the second round, you knit into one below, and it helps go boop. But there are times when you're working a motif where it's going to mess up the motif because it needs a certain amount of stitches in the image to create the picture that you're knitting. So it's personal preference. And what I do is I just try it. Whatever motif I'm working, I might try going into the one below to even it out. And I just see, okay, does that look less abrupt to my eye when I do that wherever I need it? Or does it actually cause more of a weird thing happening to this motif because now I've messed up this number of stitches you can see in that column and it's not helping. So I play around with it, and that's the good news is it's your knitting. You can do what you want. I don't know what method you're using to help that jog, but maybe you found a really great one that you could apply to color work too. But you do not have to, but you also, there's no reason not to play around with it unless it really messes up the motif. All right, question number 4. My question is about color management. I am wanting to knit your shift again and plan on using spin cycle dyed in the wool. My question is, how do you manage the color stripes on the sleeves, or should I not worry and just let the yarn stripe as it's dyed? Also, I love the skirt you're wearing in the pattern. Oh, sorry, I completely lost where I was there. I love the skirt you're wearing in the pattern photos. If you made it again, if you made it, would you please share what pattern you used? Why was that so hard for me to get out? Probably because I needed water. Okay, I'll start with the skirt. I didn't make it. That is an old Ace and Jig skirt that I've had for years. So I didn't make that one. But there are so many skirt patterns out there. You could absolutely make something really similar. All right, and okay. So when it comes to spin cycle yarns, here's the way I think about it when I am knitting a whole sweater. And I personally am kind of a buy the ticket, take the ride when it comes to yarn that is going to change colors throughout the skein. I don't love to micromanage because there's a level of stress that would come with that for me, where I don't want to go into that perfectionist part of my brain and get frustrated if it's not perfectly matching up. So what I tend to do, there's a couple different areas that you might be thinking about in terms of the sleeves. Whenever I am winding skeins, I always do a center pole ball, because what that does is it gives you two ends to choose from. And so if you have a couple balls of yarn going for your sweater, what you can do is you can look at the outer strand and the inner strand of any of those skeins and be like, okay, which one is the closest? Because while I just like to let the colors do their thing, if I can get close to where I left off for the sleeve division, awesome. So that is about as far as I would try to control it. Is I'm going to pick the skein that is semi-close to where I divide it. And I think that's the only part in the sweater where I would want it to line up fairly well. The nice thing about that sweater too, though, is you're basically doing, it's like stripes on stripes on stripes. You've got a background of self-striping yarn, and you've got a foreground. You've got all the details, which are in a self-striping yarn, but also you're doing stripes of the self-striping yarn. You know, you've got like 3 sections, I think it is, of 3 different colorways. And so even if you can't match up, like, it's going to look fine because you've got a lot going on all over with that sweater. It is a buffet of color play. You don't have to match it up perfectly. I do not try to match the sleeves going down. People have, and sometimes I'll tell you what, it can look so nice, but I love a little asymmetry. I love a little imperfection. I embrace not matching and a little bit of clashing. That's just, I've been that way since I was little. So that's where my heart and my joy is. I love having a favorite sleeve. I love picking at the end, like, ooh, look at what colors this side got compared to this side. This is my favorite. But if you're somebody who is like, no ma'am, I want them to line up, then you're gonna have to micromanage. And there are definitely people out there who do. I have a few friends who do, and they 100% love to, I mean, they'll even cut up their balls of yarn so that they can plan it out. So it is your journey, your adventure, the road you're walking. You get to decide which path to take. But I say let your hair down and just have fun and enjoy the experience you're being given with this unique yarn. All right, last question. I only started knitting 6 months ago. I just have to pause. I'm realizing right now that I have multiple questions in here of people who've only been knitting in the last 6 months to a year. And I am just, welcome. I'm so happy that you found your way to knitting. It is one of my absolute favorite things. I think it always will be. And it just warms my heart anytime somebody takes up the craft. So I love hearing people who are like, oh, I've only been doing this for a little bit. And I'm like, yes, we are still recruiting. Okay. I've only started knitting 6 months ago and I am addicted. Me too. I am currently knitting a sweater, but want to modify it to have a split hem. I'm using half twisted rib, twisted knit stitches and normal purls, and I went ahead and tried it, knitting back and forth, and it all looks good except the edges look messy. What can I do to fix this? Am I supposed to be slipping the edge stitches? Do you think a stockinette border would be better too? I have searched the internet and for some reason cannot figure it out. Any suggestions would be so appreciated. Okay, so I have a couple ideas here. Yes, slipping the edges will definitely help clean it up. It will also kind of create a collapsing on either side of that split hem. So it just kind of depends on how you want that split hem to lay. So easiest, and what I've definitely done in the past, is just slip those edge stitches. You're gonna slip it with yarn in front on purl rows and with the yarn in back on knit rows. And by that, I just mean like whatever the edge is. Obviously you're not knitting or purling an entire row if you're ripping. But the other option is you could even do a little edge treatment on there for something that will lay a little flatter and not kind of curl in at all. And so one thing you could do is actually just like 3 stitches of garter stitch at the end of your ribbing, and that would lay flat and it could look really, really nice. So something that we often do with like our swatches is we'll do this little bit of garter stitch. So you could do that and then have your ribbing. And I think that that would just look really nice. I was actually thinking about that. I have a sweater in the works that has a split hem, and that's something that I'm playing with. So that's an idea. But yeah, otherwise just slip those stitches, because it's when we do like the knitting all the way to the end, purling all the way to the end. I usually only do that if I'm going to pick up stitches, and then it's going to be tucked away. So there you go. But way to take on a fun little modification. That is so awesome. Okay, I think that's everything. We got all the questions. I already talked your ear off about the socks and the sock knit along. I'm going to be at Sacred Sheep this weekend. So if you're watching this, I'm there. That is what I'm doing this weekend. It is my last work trip of the year. I'm so excited. It is a great festival. So I'm really excited to go do that, to do some chats and teach a steeking class. And I think that's all I got for now. I'll see you back here hopefully in a week. If you want to ask a question, there is a form to fill out below. And as always, thank you for spending some time with me. I hope that you feel inspired to go knit or make something, and have a great weekend. Bye.